Okay. Welcome to Coffee with Katie, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Coffee with Katie is a monthly networking and educational event that I host for cooperators across the country. I've been very lucky to have been mentored and received generous information from lots of cooperators over the years, and this is my way of giving back. So it's a way for us all to connect and share information.
And you go,
And I do
uh,
them once a month. And
yeah. Well, me
usually
being
the,
retired too, some days I really got to
one
think.
second here, usually and towards the end of the month, third Thursday of the month is usually third or fourth Thursday of the month. So glad you're here. If you join the newsletter, my newsletter list, you will be able to be notified of all of these. And we have usually around 20 people registered and maybe 10 to 15 who are able to attend. This week or this month, we have 49 people registered, record attendance, because I think we have a very interesting topic, a very compelling reason to get together and talk, and that is grants and the fact that we all are looking for funds. This work is so important. What we're doing is so valuable. But the funding just isn't there. It's a challenge to get the funds to open the store, whether you're opening a traditional co-op and using owner loans and preferred shares, or if you are relying more heavily on grants. There just is a challenge when it comes to funding. And I'm so excited to have Kim here. Kim is with SunCoast Market in Imperial Beach, California. I have had the pleasure of visiting Imperial Beach and getting to know some of the people there. I have family in the San Diego area. Imperial Beach is just south of San Diego, right on the border. And lovely area, lovely people. And Kim has had great success in securing grants for SunCoast Market. I'm sure she'll tell you all about that. She's raised $1.2 million in grant funding for their co-op. So Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you can let us know how you want to do questions, if you want to wait till the end for questions or however you want to go ahead with that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie, and thanks for having me here today. So, hi everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm going to share some slides with you, and I'll talk through them. I don't think oftentimes I can't see people, like if you raise your hand or stuff. So maybe Katie can watch that. Feel free to just,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you, Katie. So feel free to just, speak up or, put your comments or questions in a chat. And I'm also going to stop a few times too to get feedback from you and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And so, yeah, let's get started. So I will share my screen. And let's see. There we go. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah, okay, great. If I can get this out of there. Okay, so as Katie said, we are SunCoast Market Co-op, and I'll start by telling you a little bit about Imperial Beach. Let's see, it didn't go to the next slide. There we go. So as Katie said, we are in the southwest corner of San Diego County, and we're adjacent to the international border with Mexico. We are a very socioeconomically and ethnically diverse community. 69% people of color. We're majority Hispanic community. Primarily low, moderate income, although we do have more expensive homes and condos, right along the beach. We're a city of 27,000 people, 4 square miles, so it's relatively small. And we have limited healthy food and grocery options. We have one outlet grocery store and one very small Mexican food market store. And so a lot of people are doing, their shopping, or at least some of their shopping out of town. And we're saturated with fast food, convenience, and liquor stores. We have over 40. We just had another fast food restaurant open and another one coming. So, and given that, we know how environment can impact your food choices. And we do have high rates of diet-related illnesses such as diabetes and heart disease. So we incorporated in 2016. It was a group of residents who were frustrated by the lack of healthy food options, lack of grocery stores in our community. And somebody said, we knew that like major stores, like, you know, we have Sprouts as a natural food store here, Trader Joe's, we're not going to come to our community for a variety of reasons. And someone said, why don't we try opening a food co-op? So that's how we got connected with the wonderful resources with Food Co-op Initiative and got to meet Katie and all kinds of great people. We signed a lease for a space in October of 2022. We have not started construction yet. We've seen increasing costs in terms of construction and labor, so we have to raise more money. Excuse me. And we also have had challenges. Our utility company has taken over a year to tell us what they need to do and what it's going to cost to upgrade the electrical in our building to meet our refrigeration needs. So I'll start by showing you our funding stack. So these are funds that we have received. Some of them are we've received directly, and some of them have gone to our fiscal sponsor, which I'll talk about that in a little bit. Basically awarded and received is kind of the same thing. So, you know, like I said, some of the funds we have, you know, immediate access to. Others we have to request the funds from our fiscal sponsor. And then the U.S. Department of Agriculture grant, the USDA HFFI, which is a great opportunity for funding. And I would keep your eyes open for when they release the next opportunity. That one is a cost reimbursement, but you can ask for funds up front if you can't afford to pay for something and ask for their, you know, and then get reimbursed later. So we have, Katie mentioned, we've actually raised now almost 1.3 million in grants, quite a bit, 250,000 in donations. And then we have our landlord contribution and vendor free fill we've put in here. We were hoping to open debt-free, but it's unlikely that that's going to happen because of the increasing costs. So right now we also have almost $900,000 loan. So in terms of what we have awarded and committed, and this includes our whole project, you know, timeline from start to finish and opening the store, we've raised $2.9 million. And we have about 1.3 remaining to reach be totally funded for our project at 4.2 million. And we have right now $850,000 in grants pending. And just to let you know why we decided not to go the owner loan and preferred shares route, because I know that's been really successful for some other co-ops. There were several reasons. One, we thought it would be hard to raise that kind of money and get that kind of commitment from our community. Because this is a really expensive place to live, and we have a very transient population. We're very close to Navy SEAL base. We have a lot of military living in our community. We're almost 70% rental households. So that was one of the challenges. Second, we had people on our board that had experience in grant writing and in nonprofit fundraising. So we thought we could take advantage of those that experience. And San Diego County also has a lot of philanthropy. There are a lot of people with money and people giving away money. So we thought, you know, we should try to get their attention and try to raise money through those resources that are out there. So does anybody have any questions on our funding stack? If not, I will move on to the next slide. Oh, yes.
I do, Kim.
Hi, Sheila.
Oh my God. There we go. Hold on. I just want to put my face on. There we go. I'm asking you only because, you know, we're darn near neighbors, as well as Kim in Riverside. You said you had $850,000 in grants pending. What other ones are there, and are they more location specific? Maybe you and I can have this conversation offline, or is it something more nationwide?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have a fairly sizable grant request in for $400,000 to the County of San Diego. So our County Board of Supervisors has money for each of their districts that can be given out as grants. So that's something for people to look at to see if maybe, you know, your county or city might have something similar. We also applied for a pretty good size American Heart Association grant. And we've had a really long standing relationship with our local American Heart Association office. So they alerted us to this grant opportunity, and it was only for California. So hopefully, you know, I apologize, I didn't think about spreading the word about that, but if we see that come out again, we'll certainly share that with people. And
Thank
then there's a small foundation grant. You know, sometimes after you get a foundation grant, they'll let you apply the next year. So there's a foundation grant where we applied before, got $100,000. That's the Hervey Family Fund here. And we actually, that one's not quite pending yet, but we're about to apply for that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Okay. So, you know, I think one thing that is really working in our
Hey,
favor as
Tim,
food
I'm gonna
yeah.
stop you real quick. There was
Sure.
one more question in the
Oh, yeah.
chat from Safa, who's wondering about how long it took to secure all of those grants.
Our very first grant we received, and it's actually not on our funding stack, but we received in 2019. But most of them have been in, I would say, the last 2 years. Yeah, 2.5 years. And yeah, I would say that's about right. And, you know, one of the things that you'll run into, we'll talk about pros and cons of grant funding right now, but, you know, a lot of grants are only for 1 or 2 years. So it's kind of a juggling act, you know, tracking, you know, when your money comes in, how soon you have to spend it. But yeah, I would say the last 2.5 years, we've raised most of most of those funds, other than like owner equities part of our funding stack. And we started selling ownerships back in 2018. So one of the things that's working in our favor is that co-ops align with the priorities of many funders. So, you know, we are, and depending on, you know, specific focus of your co-op, you know, we have a big focus on promoting community health because we have, you know, high rates of diet-related diseases. A couple of us on the board came from sort of the public health and health education arena. So that's something that we have focused on a lot. It's in our mission statement. But there's, you know, funders out there that are funding things around community health, fighting chronic diseases, addressing health disparities, which, you know, means that, you know, people in low income and communities of color tend to have higher rates of, you know, certain diseases, like I mentioned, diabetes and heart disease, and health equity. And then also co-ops can be addressing healthy food access and food security. So we talk about addressing food security through wanting to offer discounts to low-income residents. So people that are on financial assistance, when the store opens, we want to be able to offer them a discount so anybody can shop at our store. We started a farmers market 1.5 to 2 years ago. It's only monthly. But one of the things that we did there too to address food security is because we know farmers market food tends to be more expensive than buying like at our grocery outlet store. So we got a small grant from the city to give out $20 vouchers to 20 people each month at our farmers market so that they can use that to buy food from the vendors. And then another way that co-ops can address food security is, you know, after we're open, donating food to local food banks and things like that. So then, you know, you may have a focus on food justice and food sovereignty. Another area, even if your community is not considered, you know, a quote unquote food desert, your co-op's going to be doing a lot in terms of economic development for your region and creating jobs. And so there may be, you know, grants out there for businesses to support economic development and job creation. And we use the National Co-op Grocers puts out a report where they evaluate what is the economic impact of food co-ops in their regions. And so we took their calculation and estimated for a food co-op our size that we'd be generating $6.5 million in our local economy each year. So that's one of the thing that we'll often put in our grant applications. You're going to be supporting local farms and local businesses. And that's, you know, in our community, I know that's really important. There's a lot of interest in supporting local. A lot of us are focused on sustainability, you know, green business practices, having bulk and bin food where people can use recyclable and reusable containers. We'll have a focus on food waste reduction, and we're helping to, you know, by supporting sustainable farms, addressing climate change. And I just thought I'd throw it out there if anybody can think of any other areas, maybe if you've written a grant, what it sort of focused on, or did I miss any? Maybe there's some out there that I hadn't really thought about that your co-op might be addressing that might be of interest to funders. Nothing there. Okay, so let's move on.
Oh, I could.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
So the Bethlehem Food Co-op went after a HUD grant, and it is for economic development. And so we were going to go for it ourselves at a certain rate, and then we have a good relationship with the people on the city. You know, not every employee, but the council and the mayor and different people are all members of the co-op. So they invited us to partner with them, and then we got a $2.9 million grant, but we haven't had any money yet, and it's been a year and a half. So I always like to caution people, if you think that you're gonna get your money right away, it doesn't happen that way. It takes a long time to work with the federal government. And then if you do a third party like we did, you have to go agree from the government, the HUD to the city, and then another agreement from the city to us, and separate portal. So there's a lot of work to it. So just be mindful. I think I'd say it just so that you're mindful that if you do it, that you know that you can't depend on that money for a long time. So you have to have all other things going on at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kathy. And congratulations to Bethlehem. I mean, that is a really amazing grant.
Congratulate me when we get the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And what I would say in my experience of grants, you know, it really kind of depends. I think you guys had a particularly maybe sort of unique, and I think there's some other, maybe Chicago Market is doing that too, where they got money designated specifically like through your congressperson, where it had to go through, you know, probably federal appropriations and be, you know, probably be in a bill and all of that. So that's really complicated, you know, would take a lot of time. I would say if you're applying, you know, to a grant opportunity where they do it every year, you know, they've got their system down, you'll have a better idea of when you might see that money. So yeah, really good point. But yeah, be mindful of that. So it can really mess up your timelines. Yeah. So one of the really important things about writing grants successfully is the preparation that has to happen going into it. And just like, you know, if you're doing an owner loan campaign or, you know, preferred share campaign, there's a lot of planning, pre-work that you need to do to be successful. So, you know, one is researching grant opportunities, you know, finding out what's out there that might be available to you. And one of the things I do is I sign up for newsletters of funding agencies. So in California, we have the California Farm to Fork office, which is our agriculture and nutrition program. So they release grant opportunities. So I'm on their mailing list. There's mailing list at the federal level that you can get on regarding federal grants. There are sometimes nonprofit associations that have, or also community economic development agencies, especially I watch one on a state level where they will post funding opportunities on their newsletters. So those have been really helpful. You can just, you know, Google, do internet searches, you know, you can do by your location, you could do by a food topic, or no, sorry, food topic, a grant topic like food, economic development grants, see what's out there and start to do some research. Read the newspaper. We see, you know, I see articles all the time about X organization just got a grant from this group. So then you can look at, who did they get that grant from, if it's an area that's similar to, what a food co-op does, and look to see what their grant requirements are. I also have looked at nonprofit agencies locally at their annual reports. And sometimes they'll post media articles on their website. So you can look at press releases. So you can also look there to see who's funding them and do some research on those funders. There may be a nonprofit center, a library, or college that is subscribing to a resource list of grants. One is called the Foundation Directory. I think it's fairly expensive to subscribe on your own, but if you could find somebody who has that and be able to go in and do some research, you can search by particular areas, by particular topics, and get some ideas of grant opportunities there. And then once you start doing this research, I would suggest creating a spreadsheet with your research. I know I have a terrible memory, so sometimes I forget, well, what was the grant deadline for that agency? Did I research that one before? I don't remember. So you can put all that information in a spreadsheet, and so you'll know the grant deadlines. If you've got, deadlines coming up, you want to know, remember that there's going to be an application due in June. You can put that in your calendar so you have a tickler, note what they fund, and that's really helpful. And so we have an ongoing, we actually have a grant writing team of volunteers. There's 3 of us, and 2 of us do most of the writing, and all of us do research. So that, is helpful. And we keep that updated at the shared Google Sheets document so that we keep track of the research that we do. And if anybody, yeah, go ahead,
I was
Katie.
just going to mention, Kim, that
Yeah.
when I was looking at grants or looking for grants, I would pay attention when I was attending community events.
Oh,
Like often, if you attend a musical event or something that has a program, often they indicate who supports the funding for that production or event.
Right.
And I would always put those entities on my spreadsheet and research them and see, are there grant funding opportunities that would apply for a co-op?
Yeah, that's another great idea. Yes, to look at who are those people that are funding things that are happening in your community. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. If you're applying for most of the grants that we've applied for, you have to be a nonprofit to apply for those. And we're not a nonprofit. We're incorporated in the state as a cooperative corporation. So if you're not a nonprofit and you want to go for nonprofit grants, you need to establish a relationship with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. And it's helpful to use an organization that has done this before. I know a lot of folks are using, I think it's CDS in the Midwest. Yeah. In California, we have a cooperative center, the California Center for Cooperative Development, and they are serving as a fiscal sponsor for us. And I believe Long Beach and maybe Riverside as well. And they will apply. So what we do is we write the grant. We had to establish first an agreement with them of how this was going to work. We had an attorney that worked on it with us. And then we write the grant, we look for the grant opportunities. We let them know that in the beginning, we were letting them know that we were going to apply for something. Now I just apply and then let them know, if we get it. They will, what'll happen is if you get awarded the grant, the money will actually go to them. So you don't have control of that money, but you have an agreement, that they're using that money that you bring in for your co-op. And so typically what we do in our agreement is we will pay for something and then we ask them for reimbursement. And it's their responsibility to make sure that they are using the money, paying us for services and activities that fit within the grant parameters. If you were to say fold and, your co-op doesn't go forward, that money can only be transferred to another nonprofit. It can't come to the co-op. So that's something to keep in mind. And they also can apply, they can pay vendors directly for us as well.
Hey, Kim,
So I would, yeah.
Oh, can you repeat the name of the fiscal sponsor for your co-op?
Yeah.
Cooperative?
Yeah, it's the California Center for Cooperative Development.
Thank you.
Yeah. We also, we have an agency in San Diego that serves as a fiscal sponsor for a lot of organizations. That's, I think it's called Mission, maybe it's Mission Driven Finance or something like that. But anyway, so there may be, you know, just organizations out there. You could talk to nonprofits, see if anybody knows of anyone who does that. Because a lot of times there's small organizations that don't have a nonprofit status yet, but want to, you know, bring in money for their community. And so they'll use a fiscal sponsor. I would create a one-pager that talks about your purpose, the benefits of a co-op, and I'll show you an example of one of ours following this slide. So that as you are maybe reaching out to people via email, if you have a meeting with them, you have, you know, something that you can share with them so that they remember you and know what, you know, what you're doing. I would start creating a grant writing template with information about your history, the need, why your co-op is needed, relevant data, because that information, oftentimes you'll see similar questions. They may ask the question differently, but a lot of times funding applications will ask you about your organizational history, what the need is. Sometimes it's called a problem statement, you know, how you will address it, all of those things. So if you have a template, and again, we used Google Docs, so we have a shared document, and you can update it as you see new data. Maybe, you know, you have demographic data that sometimes you use. You can keep that in your template, and the next time you're writing a grant, you can go there and use some of that language that you've already come up with. And then determine, as you're doing the application, you know, pay really close attention to what they're funding. And also a lot of times funders will list on their website what they've given money to in the past. So that's also helpful to look at, and be really specific about what you need the money for and how you'll spend it. So the very first grant that we got that I mentioned that we got in 2019 was a $6,000 grant to hire a bilingual community engagement coordinator, is what we called the person. And that was because we had a really awesome outreach manager, but she didn't speak Spanish, and we have a lot of Spanish speaking people in our community. I think we had one board member at that time that spoke Spanish, but we really wanted to make sure that we were out there in the community connecting with people. And so we used $6,000 to hire a part-time community engagement coordinator. And we've kept that position all through since 2019. Sometimes we paid it out of our owner equity because that person was also bringing in new owners to the co-op. And other times we've got grants. So right now we have a grant from the Parker Foundation, which I think is a local foundation, to fund both our outreach manager and our bilingual community engagement coordinator. The other thing I would say as you're writing grant applications, really pay attention to the language that they use. You know, I used to work for the County of San Diego in our Health and Human Services Agency, and I read a lot of proposals. And you need to be really careful that you're answering the question. And sometimes I might even repeat their question as sort of my opening statement. You know, the way that we plan to, you know, meet the food security needs of the community is blah, blah, blah. And I would also use, you know, the type of jargon that they're using in their grant proposal or their grant opportunity. So say they're talking a lot about food justice, or they're talking a lot about food security or health disparities. I would, you know, use that language so that it makes it really easy for the people that are going to be reading your proposal to see how you align with their values. And then the third thing that I think has been really important to our success is making ourselves really visible in the community. You know, we had a big hill to climb when we started because people didn't know what a co-op was. There was a lot of suspicion. We got accused on social media of being a pyramid scheme. And so we did a lot, you know, to be out in the community to show that we really care about the community. You know, we'd go to community cleanups with our, you know, SunCoast t-shirts on. During COVID, we did a lot. We started a produce distribution system where people could drive up. We partnered with a local food distributor who typically sells food to restaurants, but restaurants were closed and they had great produce available. So they did $20 boxes of produce. People could order online through this distribution company. And we did a drive-through pickup of your produce and additional groceries that they had available during COVID. So, you know, and we've worked a lot to get ourselves in our local paper. We have a local paper that's been very supportive. She's actually the reporter, the journalist, as a member of the co-op. So that's, you know, really have worked hard to get noticed and establish relationships. I've heard Carol Ritter from Bethlehem talk a lot about, you know, how important relationships are. If people know you, they have, you know, it's just going to be easier for you to go to grant rather than it's almost like, you know, applying for a job, you know, where, you know, if you're just one of 100, you know, applications, you may not get noticed. But if you've, you know, gone to events where you knew they were going to be and you could introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about what you're doing. Our county supervisor had an open house and, you know, I went to that and introduced myself. I think that was the first time I met her. And then try to schedule follow-up meetings with them, you know, really try to get meetings, you know, let them know what you're doing, you know, ask if permission, if you could put them on your newsletter list so that they are, you know, aware of what you're doing in your project and how important it is to your community. So let me show you one of our little fact sheets. So this one, it's just kind of fun. It has a lot of information on it. Actually, we've also done more like business, you know, business looking one pagers, kind of depending on who the audience is that we're meeting with. But, you know, it lays out, you know, why this is important to our community, how we are going to do it. You know, that we're funded via community members and other funders and passionate donors. Households purchase shares. We leased a 6,000 square foot site. And then we listed out the co-op benefits, you know, why this is valuable for our community. Whoops, sorry. We have, you know, better food. It's, you know, we have a focus on equity and community. We took some of the data from national co-op grocers that food co-ops donate 44% more on average to local charities than conventional stores. We've offered health education. So we have done a lot of classes around healthy cooking demo. We've done healthy cooking demos. We've just done fun cooking classes. We've brought in speakers. So that's one of the ways that we serve our community and have built our credibility in the community. And then sustainability, how where the benefits are from co-ops around sustainability, and then the economic benefit. So talking a little bit about the pros and cons of grants. So one of the really awesome pros of getting grants is that you can receive money that you don't have to pay back. So, which is awesome. Once you've obtained a grant, you're more likely to receive others, and it's called leveraging. So one of the things that really helped us is during COVID, when the federal government released the American Rescue Plan Act funding, I was watching that carefully because they were giving a lot of money to cities, counties, all kinds of public agencies to help the community recover from COVID. And so I was watching that, and we started advocating with our city to give us a grant from the ARPA funding. And I think we were the first food co-op to get ARPA funding. Local ARPA funding, and I've shared that experience with other co-ops. Chicago Market was really successful in getting ARPA funding, but we used that. We got a $500,000 grant from our city, and that was really helpful in getting grants from other agencies where we could, you know, show the support that we have from our city, and our city is invested in this project. They believe in it, and they were willing to, you know, give us a grant of $500,000. So that can really help as you start to build that history in your success of raising money. There are a lot of different grant opportunities out there. There's federal, As I mentioned earlier, the Healthy Food Financing Initiative is a great resource. A lot of co-ops have gotten funding through them. At the state level, there may be opportunities. There's local foundations, private foundations. Banks have to, there's a federal law that they have to invest, I think primarily in low moderate income communities, but that might be a place. We just had a meeting recently with our own bank, and we're trying to get some funding from them. It builds, you know, when you get a grant, you can announce it in your local paper, on your social media, and it can build your organization's credibility and visibility when they see that other people are, you know, supporting your project. And then it builds new relationships for you and advocates. So, you know, we've had some folks who have then helped us say, for example, you know, our city grant, then we've asked our city council members to help us in connecting with county elected officials or other officials to help seek funding. So your funder may become an advocate for you and help you find other funding as well. So that could be really valuable. So some of the cons, you probably, unless you are a nonprofit, you'll need a nonprofit fiscal sponsor to apply for most grants. And you'll pay them an administrative fee for them to cover, you know, to cover their time in tracking the money and everything. And I think that typically runs 5 to 10% of the money that you bring in. Whoops, sorry. There's, like we mentioned, you know, time-consuming research is needed to identify potential grants. Writing grants can take significant preparation, planning, and time. If I have a complicated grant, I actually have like a work plan with dates, because there's certain things you want to get ready right away. So for example, if you might be including letters of support in your grant application, I would ask for those early on, because especially if it's a government agency, your city or your county, or maybe your state elected officials, that you're asking them to provide a letter for your grant application. It might be, I know our county bureaucracy takes forever to get anything done. So I have to know to, you know, ask them for that really early on in the process to make sure that I get it in time. So there'll be some things that you might need to, you know, prepare, make sure that you have in time, and give yourself enough time to write your grant. And then have somebody, you know, else look at it before you submit it. Because it really helps to have another eye look at it to see, you know, are you answering the questions? Does it make sense? Because that, you know, will make a big difference in how successful you are. It helps to have one or more people that, you know, can write well. You don't have to be a published author or anything, but just, you know, somebody who can write clearly, doesn't have too many spelling errors. And ideally knows your organization well, so they can really express, you know, the passion. You can hire grant writers. I know it can be sometimes challenging to find grant writers, but you can hire them, and you know, just working through them, sharing your material with them, sharing your materials with them, they can get to know your organization as well, and help you write a grant for you.
Hey,
yeah, go
Kim,
ahead.
we do have a question in the
Yes.
chat. Becky's wondering if you had prior experience with federal grants prior to your work with the co-op.
I did. When I worked at the county, I was part of grant writing teams that submitted federal grants. And then I actually, when I retired from the county, I went to work for a local nonprofit as a grant writer. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember actually if we did any federal grants there, but I did have experience via the county in federal grants. And actually federal grants, you know, is interesting. Some of them are really complicated, not complicated, but, you know, could take a lot of time and require a lot, and others not so much. So it just kind of depends. I thought the Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant was pretty reasonable in terms of the amount of time it took, what they asked. It was one of the, you know, less, you know, significantly time-sucking grants that I've had to put together. So that one is a really reasonable grant application. So it varies a lot. But the federal grants, yeah, and I would reach out to your ownership. There might be people out there who have experience writing grants that could, be a part of your grant writing team. Next bullet is, competition is fierce, and it kind of depends on the grant opportunity. And the success rate, in general is low, but I wouldn't let that discourage you. Again, I think especially if you're applying for local grants and you have established a relationship with, the funders, and they know you, that can help your success a lot. And this was just a statistic that I found at the Society for Nonprofits. On the average day, roughly 2,700 proposals are submitted, and fewer than 200 will receive funding. So it's just a reality. We just spent a lot of time submitting a grant. I think it was back in June. It was called the California Healthy Refrigeration Grant. And it was a lot of work, but they funded energy efficient refrigeration for independent grocery stores, food co-ops, nonprofits. It was a lot of work, and we were really disappointed that we didn't get funded. But it was, I think they had $9 million available statewide, and they got $60 million in grant application requests. So it was really competitive. So, that just happens sometimes. There can be strings attached to the money you receive. So oftentimes your funder might want, they could want quarterly reports, semi-annual reports, annual report. You need to make sure that your treasurer or accountant is tracking your money and what you're spending it on, making sure that it is that it's being spent appropriately and in accordance with the grant. So it's really important that you be able to show that if they gave you money for a outreach manager, you can't spend the money on yard signs, unless you specify that in your grant application. So you have to really make sure you spend the money for what you said you would. I found a lot of funders also are very flexible. So if you find that you need to change your budget a little, maybe you've just found out that you need to spend money here, and you're not going to spend money in this budget category. Oftentimes they're flexible in doing budget adjustments for you. And one thing to keep in mind is that most grants are short-term. So a lot of the grants that we've received have 1 year, 2-year timelines. Sometimes there isn't a timeline. They just, a foundation might just give you the money. But a lot of times you have to be mindful of that too if you're coming up to your deadline. And again, I have found that oftentimes funders will give extensions as well. So if you weren't able to spend all the money for whatever reason, oftentimes they'll give you an extension. And like Kathy mentioned too with Bethlehem, it might take a long time to get your money. So it just kind of depends on the situation. So were there any comments and questions in there regarding that?
We did have some questions or comments in the chat, mentioning of the extension office, a university extension office for grant writing classes as a suggestion, which I think is great. Absolutely. And oftentimes, even just, you might just Google that. I've seen even online courses offered through universities or nonprofits. And then we did just have a question from Susan, and Susan, I think I might need you to clarify. She asked, can you see grant proposals that succeed? I'm not sure what she's meaning.
You said not that many of these grant applications were actually granted for the last one you were talking about. And I was just wondering, it seems like it would be nice if you could take a look at the ones that did succeed and learn from that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You might have an agency that maybe you're, have a good relationship with, like a local food bank or something that, might be willing to share their proposal with you. So you could take a look at it. I know when I worked at the county, this was more for like contract proposals, but they were public information. So you could go into an office and ask to see the proposals that were submitted for a particular request for proposals. But that's probably sort of unique. But you could look, we're talking about the foundation, how sometimes they'll list who they've funded in the past. So you might be able to find somebody who would be willing to share, what they submitted in the past. And I'm happy, to share if somebody wanted to see one of our applications, I'm happy to share that. But, they're each quite different, just kind of depending on who the funder was.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, Kim, that in the spirit of P6, I've seen lots of co-ops share their grant writing, their grant applications with each other as help. So
yeah. And I'm trying to remember, I think before we wrote the HFFI grant, I think I reached out to a co-op that had got it before. And I don't remember exactly if they sent me their proposal or not, but yeah, especially for grants where there's other co-ops that have got money, you can ask them P6 and see if they'll share it with you. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. So I just also mention a little bit about donations. I know some of you may have seen our Vice President Outreach Manager, Shannon Ratliff, did a session on our gala that we had, our fundraising event. So if you're also, looking for donations, again, you can receive money that you don't have to pay back. You can engage owners, non-owners, and adjacent communities in helping to fund your store. And we have an online fundraising initiative going on right now called Fund a Need, which is we're asking for people to help fund our equipment. We're targeting, our goal is to raise $100,000. It can generate media coverage. You can get the word out that you have this, fundraising effort going on right now. You can have events around it. You can possibly engage new volunteers and build excitement about the co-op. Again, if you are accepting, you want to be able to accept tax deductible donations, you'll need a fiscal sponsor. And we actually have a different fiscal sponsor for our donations because we had a small nonprofit here that was inactive that had started a educational farm, which got taken over by a government agency. And the founder was very involved in the co-op and suggested that we could use them as a fiscal sponsor. So it's kind of nice because they're local too. So people know that their money is going to a local agency. I don't know that there's a lot of, it's kind of uncharted territory maybe for food co-ops. I haven't heard a lot about co-ops seeking donations. As I mentioned, we were very fortunate. We have somebody on our board who's a fundraising professional, and she had worked for the San Diego Zoo. So she's been helpful in that. And again, it can take a lot of work of planning, especially if you're going to do like a big event. The other thing that I'll go to the next slide. So here's some of the ways we've tried to raise money through donations. We had a big Here Comes the Sun event that was actually hosted and sponsored by one of our owners who's been really supportive, who lives in a wealthier community. And so we had the event there and we were really successful and got some pretty significant grants there, but it was a huge amount of work. I know some co-ops have had some success with sponsorship and naming rights opportunities where organizations can sponsor, say, a store department. We have not had good luck with that yet. So we have had a lot of meetings. We thought this would be a great opportunity for healthcare organizations, health plans to have a presence in our store. We'd give them lots of, PR in our, newsletters, things like that. And we just haven't been able to sell that to anybody yet. And then we have online on our donate page on our website, we're calling it a Fund a Need. So help us fund our shopping baskets, our convection oven, and we're trying to raise $100,000 for equipment. And we've raised about $25,000 so far through that. So let me go down to the next one here. So just some ABCs of success. In closing, I know we're getting close to the end here. Ask for help and advice. I have to say, I used to be really shy about asking for help. It wasn't something that came naturally to me, but I have found people to be so helpful. Our owners, our elected officials, nonprofit executives. Actually, through the fundraising event that we had, I met a woman who worked for a foundation in Kansas City. And she's here in San Diego now, but she reached out to a contact that she had here with our San Diego Foundation. And they followed up and sent me a code to apply for a family foundation grant that isn't even advertised. They just find people that they think would fit for that grant. And that was the Hervey Family Fund, where we got $100,000. So that was pretty amazing, just through contacts. Ask people to make introductions for you. You could ask an elected official or maybe, one of your partners, do you know anybody maybe that we should talk to, that gives out grants. Build on your strengths and talents that you have in your board, in your ownership. Build relationships and partnerships. Those people will help you. We've had several of our partners reach out to us and say, hey, did you hear about this grant opportunity? And we do the same for our partners as well. Build and nurture your reputation and credibility in the community, because that will all help. Have confidence in what you're doing. The more you ask for donations and the more grant writing you do, the easier it will be. And sometimes even when you fail, if you don't get awarded a grant, oftentimes you can get feedback on, you can ask them, can you give us some feedback on, why we weren't selected, which could help us in the future. And step out of your comfort zone. It's not easy. I don't find it easy to ask for money, but I've gotten much more comfortable with it. And, what you all are doing is really important. And, your passion and your commitment and your persistence will help you to be successful. So here is my contact information. So this is my personal email, my cell phone number. So feel free to reach out to me if I can help in any way. So I'll just turn it over in case we have any last questions or comments. Anybody want to share some success that they've had? Be happy to share that with folks.
Well, thank you, Kim.
Sure.
What a wealth of information. Clearly, by the attendance here today, people were eager to hear what you have to say. So I'll be quiet here, and please unmute yourself and ask questions. We've got about 6 minutes left. Plenty of time.
Dave McAdams from Cultivate Community Food Co-op. I just wanted to ask the question about when you were working on your grants and your financials, because how co-ops are funding their initial set of through ownership shares and not showing income. How do you show that the profitability or where you're going and how you're doing that kind of thing? What was that struggle?
Well, you have your owner equity coming in. So, that helps to show that you have, community support and people investing in your co-op. It really kind of depends on the funder too. Sometimes they won't ask about your, operating budget or, your financial past. So that part just kind of depends too. I don't know if anybody else has any other suggestions on that. But then as we also started to get grants, that became part of our success story that we could share with future funders.
Safa has her hand raised. Safa, you go right ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry I don't have my face on, but I'm at the office. Thank you so much, first of all, for sharing all of this. We are in the process, and this is really helpful. My question is, if I get it right, do you have like timeline to like open the store or to start having profit from the store, and is that kind of set yet? So when you write the grants, do you, for example, include that the co-op will will make such profit or stuff like that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that's really attractive to funders is that we're going to be self-sustaining once we open, that our operations, we're not going to keep coming back necessarily and asking for grants, whereas not a lot of nonprofits are asking for grants year after year. So we're going to be self-sustaining, and we're actually going to be able to reinvest our profits back in the community through our owner rebates, through charitable donations, through we're going to be continuing to offer education. So yeah, I would say that I think, the fact that when you get your market study done, you'll have sales projections. If you get your pro forma done, we used Colluminate to our pro forma, we could show that what our annual sales are going to be. And we sometimes include that in our grants.
Okay, 3 minutes. We have time for at least one more question. Oh, Sherry has a question.
Can you please put your email address in the chat box again? It went by kind of fast for me. I didn't get it down.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
And if you don't find or lose my address on our website, we do have a contact page. So you could also send any questions to our general contact address.
Kim, I do have one question for
Yeah.
you related to the bank funding that you are looking at. And I believe it's through the Community Reinvestment Act that banks are
Yeah.
required. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name.
No problem. No problem. I haven't seen a lot of co-ops have success in that realm. Do you know of some that have, or have you talked to others that have gone that route? In fact, I don't know
haven't.
anyone who's had success. I know they're required to do it, but I've never talked to anyone who's ever gotten money from that.
That's a really good point. I don't know. I haven't asked, if
Okay.
anybody's had success with that. I only know about it because the nonprofit I worked with for a couple of years after I left the county, they were getting grants.
Okay,
through
so they
the
do,
bank.
there is real money there then. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. At least we know that.
Yeah, but it can be really competitive. And it also can help to have a contact in your local bank with your local branch, even if it's not necessarily your bank. But I think, sometimes just having a person who can put in a good word for you, I think maybe could make a difference with the bank grants. Because we had some close relationships at that nonprofit with some of the local bank representatives.
Gotcha. Good deal. Okay, well, we're at 1:59, so if there's no other questions, we can wrap up. I'll be quiet for one more second and let someone else chime in. Okay, I know no takers. That's one of my rules in fundraising is when you ask a question, you have to be quiet and let the other person answer. You don't answer for them. Let them speak. So thank you, Kim. This has been so very valuable. Clearly by the number of people attending here, lots of interest in your expertise. So we appreciate you sharing your knowledge and practicing Cooperative Principle 6. So pleasure to have some water, not coffee today, but to have some water with you all with Coffee for Katie. And I hope that you'll join us at a future session as well. So take care.
Great. Good luck, everyone.